Well, guys, it has finally happened. I mean, I don't know how long it's been a coming, but it has finally happened. Nick Saban has hung up his windbreaker jacket. He is putting on the life vest and he is going on his jet ski at his lake house. He is sailing off into the sunset, and rightfully so. This is breaking news to almost everybody right now. This was on top of news that we saw in the NFL with Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, which we will get to. But nothing is going to be bigger than this story, probably for the next couple weeks. Even if maybe Jim Harbaugh lands with the Chargers, this is a big story because of the legacy that Nick Saban has left on college football. Of course, Alabama as well, but college football alone. But I want to welcome you guys. This is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I am your host, Matthew Raridan. And with me today are both my co-hosts today. And we're going to start with David Street.
What's up, y'all?
And Ed Smith.
Welcome.
Ed, we are so glad that you are back today. We are hoping that you are feeling better. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, this crazy virus that transfers from computer to computer. No one is safe, but we are hoping that you are feeling better. But I know you, as the college football fanatic you are not going to miss this one. This is a big show that we have a lot to cover. And actually, Ed, I am going to turn this over to you first because he put he left his thumbprint on a lot of places. And I want you to kind of go over here to all the stops that Nick Saban has had in his career as a coach.
Why, thank you, Matthew. And we'll get to that conversation about who the early favorites are in college football a little bit later. Uh, but I just wanted to point out real quick, Nick Saban's overall record as a head coach is 297, 71, and 1. That's an 806 winning percentage. The number of wins, 297, it would take him more than 10 years at this point to even get close to the record of 409 by Joe Paterno. In between them are Bobby Bowden, Bear Bryant, and Pop Warner. Those are some prestigious names in this sport that will never die, and neither will Nick's. In 1990, he got his first head coaching job at Toledo, the good old Rockets. Yes. His first loss, fun fact here, first loss was against Central Michigan. His last loss was against the University of Michigan. So that kind of congruency is kind of a nice little bow on it. But he only spent 1 year there because Michigan State saw an opportunity to get this guy that could turn a program around that quick at a mid-level school to come into the Big Ten. He stayed 5 years there. And in those 5 years, he had somewhat good success. I mean, we're talking 6-5, 6-6, 7-5, 6-6, 9-2. Well, he gets through that 99 season at Michigan State, and then he hits the SEC. And oh boy, do the wheels start churning. Through 5 years at LSU, he gets one national title and jumps over to Alabama. I think we all kind of remember the circumstances in which that kind of muddled its way through. He got his first title at Alabama against my Longhorns. I will still die on that hill that if Colt McCoy was wasn't out, then maybe that wasn't going to be the first one, but I digress. But through that, from 2007 to 2023, the rest of the SEC has been basically in Saban jail. They have been so confined by what Saban's doing that they mimic what he does. They recruit what he does. They go after everything that he has as far as coaches and players and, all these moving parts. And then here we are now. We're to a point where we have Lane Kiffin. We have Kirby Smart. We're going to have Steve Sarkisian. all running major programs in the SEC that are going to be right at that level that Alabama's at. And you know what? He's done his job. He's done a great job over the 24 years he's been in the SEC. So the the amount of time and the amount of success he's had, as a coach, that's kudos to you, man. That is 30, 34 years of head coaching experience, and nobody was better at doing it.
Yeah, and Alabama, it's first Bear Bryant and then Nick Saban. It's like they are just gifted with these just pure talented head coaches, and uh, as much as you want to hate it and knock it, you can't because it's respect where it is due. But 72 years of age, and he was still going, and he probably still could have kept going, but he's just an incredible head coach. He left his thumbprint. He left just so much of his legacy uh, everywhere he went. And David's going to talk about this here, and you named off a few, Ed, but David is going to talk about just the coaches that he has brought on. But before I say that, I want to talk about Nick's second year as a head coach at Alabama, and David loves this one because this is when Nick Saban, undefeated, went to the SEC championship game. And who did he face, David? He did indeed. And that was
We are the only team to ever beat Coach Nick Saban in the SEC championship. Nobody else can claim that, and nobody else can ever claim that again.
You are absolutely right, and it was quite an accomplishment for Florida that year. But it's not about Florida, right? This episode, but I did want to bring that up because I knew David would love that. But that was where things started to click for Nick Saban was that year, and yes, he did fall short because of Florida. But we all know what happened after that, and the wheels just kept turning and turning and turning for him. But David, yes, this coaching tree, and it's a giant tree, this coaching tree here of all the coaches that Nick Saban has or had at one point under his wing.
Well, guys, Saban is not just a great coach for his on-field results or his recruiting or his impact on players, but he's also a great coach because of the impact that he's made on his coaches, his former assistants. Guys like Jim McElwain, um, Lane Kiffin, Jimbo Fisher, and then obviously the most successful Saban assistant by far, Kirby Smart, right? Who of course we know beat Saban in the national championship. Guys, when you have assistants being poached away from you every single year, that's a good thing because you know, it shows you that you were developed by the head guy, right? It shows that Saban has mentored and nurtured these assistants to eventually go on to do great things of their own. And if you don't have that, then you're kind of you're kind of lost as a program there, right? So with Saban being able to just like I said, have the kind of impact he's had on his coaches, especially. It's no surprise to see just where things have been, and I can't believe I almost forgot to mention Steve Sarkisian, who, as I said before, Kirby Smart might be the best former Saban assistant ever, but Steve Sarkisian is Saban's most important assistant ever. Like maybe what I'm trying to say um is that Saban has made the most impact on Sarkisian, in my opinion, and Sarkisian has been very open about this, as much as he can be. Nobody wanted Sarkisian; he couldn't even get a job interview. Like that's how far down rock bottom he was. but Saban gave him a chance when no one else did. And if it wasn't for Saban, I'm not saying that Sarkisian would be jobless or that he wouldn't have a job in college football. But without Saban, he would not have a another head coaching position. And I
Can,
know Saban
can I throw in a quick story?
absolutely.
So, if Saban didn't have Sarkisian, Sarkisian would not only not be coaching, he could probably be dead because the reclamation project that Sarkisian was, Saban really took him under his wing, and part of the coaching itinerary for coaches at Alabama under Saban is to get themselves a deep physical uh, every season before the season starts. And Sarkisian went, and they realized that Sarkisian's heart was 3 times its normal size. So they had emergency surgery done. Sarkisian still has a scar that he will have for the rest of his life on his chest, and they got that fixed. And it wouldn't have been looked at if it wasn't for Saban's program and having his coaches do that every single year. So not only does Sarkisian owe him his coaching career, but he owes him his life as well.
That's incredible. And I know Coach Saban kind of has a reputation for being a cold, heartless bastard. But the truth is, Saban has a heart of gold. And while he may not show it with his words, he certainly, as Ed just demonstrated, will show it with his actions. So to sum it all up, Saban is the greatest coach of all time, at least in college football, not just because of the impact that he's had on the field, but the way that he's been able to impact so many people's lives outside of the football field. So,
Absolutely. He has many students that have as well became the teacher. They just haven't became the master. And he'll always have that. It's just something that will always be next to his name. But he has phenomenal students that have become teachers, and you just named off many there, including the likes of Kirby Smart and Steve Sarkisian. And the thing with Sark is he's the last assistant to beat him, and I'm sure that feels pretty good there. But it's also a bittersweet sweet thing as well, because Nick Saban has been the guy for so long, and he has such a huge legacy, just being that will always be there no matter what. And as far as the Crimson Tide, anytime they're mentioned, it will always
mhm.
have Nick Saban, Bear Bryant, because that's just the amazing history that program
Yeah.
had.
And let me just add another point here, okay? I got to say that I always thought that Saban would not step down until he won one more title. But, you know, I actually really respect the way that he's uh, going out, because I really respect that he's not trying to prolong this whole like, oh, let me just get one more title, and I'll be done. I think that Saban reflected on his career and realized, hey, you know what? I've won all these games. I have won all these championships. I have nothing left to prove. Okay, and plus I'm old, so it's time for me to step down.
Yeah, uh with that also being said, Nick Saban, I mean, he had his best coaching job probably ever this year. And me and David both predicted at the beginning of the year, preseason, that we thought Alabama was going to win. But my prediction was also Bama was going to win and Saban was going to retire in the sunset. I was wrong on my prediction of them winning, but Saban has retired now. And this is probably his best coaching job. Even though they didn't win a title, I don't think you could have put any other coach there on this with this team and had the same results. And that's not disrespect to their players. They do have talent there. I just don't think that any other head coach could have done and had the success this year that Nick Saban did with this Crimson
when
Tide.
you when you lead the team to a measly 17-3 victory over USF, who yes was much improved from last year, but still, the point being is that when you lead your team to a close win over USF, and you still guide them to 12 wins, then that's a sign that you did an amazing coaching job.
Absolutely. And he'll always go down as one of the best coaches that adjusts at halftime. And we saw this year with the Tennessee game, with how that first half was going for them. You would have thought that Tennessee was going to steamroll them the rest of the game, but no, they came out after halftime and Alabama just put the
Mhm.
smackdown on them. But that's who Nick Saban is. It is hard to out game him or out coach him because he's always one step ahead of you. He's playing chess while you're playing checkers, and come halftime you better believe he's going to come in there and make his adjustments and where things need to improve, and he's always done that. But he's had help along the way. We talked about the coaching tree, but I want to talk about the current coaching staff he has. And defensive coordinator Kevin Steele, coming back to Bama, we know of his recent success that he had with Auburn.
He's
And
coming back. I thought he
no,
retired as well.
no. I was saying he had came back to Alabama from previously.
Oh, okay,
No.
gotcha.
I'm just talking about Kevin Steele being part of this coaching staff that was of this last Tide season,
Okay,
and uh,
gotcha.
he came from Miami from a year before, and then before that from Auburn, and he had success within the defense. But we know the defense has always been Saban's strong suit. That's just what he loves to do. But Tommy Rees at offensive coordinator. First year there after coming from Notre Dame, and Notre Dame did have success with him there on the offensive side, but how was that going to transfer over to the SEC? Because SEC is a different ball game. And then, as we know, Ken Wisenhunt is being the special assistant to Nick Saban, to the head coach. And Ken Wisenhunt has had a career. I mean, he's been in the NFL. He was with my Pittsburgh Steelers. Then he was with the Arizona Cardinals, brought them to the Super Bowl.
That's
He's
a name I've not heard in a long time.
it,
Ken Wisenhunt.
that's what's crazy is here he is with Alabama, but no one talks about him. I mean, Ken
Yeah.
Wisenhunt has had an amazing career. I definitely want to say that, but none of these guys are going to be his successor. Who is going to be that? Who's going to replace him? And we have already seen the headlines of the number one guy, and I'm going to get to that. I am
Yeah,
going to
you
get
will.
to that. But I want to talk about some of the other names just really quick. And of course, some of them are from
He's
his coach.
stalling, guys. He's stalling.
Yeah. Lane Kiffin. He what he's doing in Ole Miss is great. They've had amazing records the last back to back seasons. But I think he's creating something special there. Is he going to be the replacement for Saban? I don't think so. Then you're going to hear, and Ed's going to love this one, Steve Sarkisian. Of course, when Saban has created these amazing coaches that have gone on to have great careers, their names are always going to be talked about right there. But Sarkisian, what he's doing at Texas, I don't think he's going to leave anytime soon. I have my top two, and I have a dark horse. So my dark horse in this, and we're going to talk about his name, I think, here later on, but that's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, what he's doing in Dallas, it's already warranting him a head coaching job, almost guarantee next year. And we're going to talk about that here in a bit with the NFL. But Dan Quinn could be that guy, defensive minded guy that Alabama may look for. Now I'm going to go to my top two, and this first name is a name that's been talked about for a while now. People got annoyed with it, and that's Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney has been rumored for the last several years, even when he was winning championships. That's going to be Nick Saban's replacement right there. It was almost like it was set in stone. He had a not so good year this year, but I don't think that really matters. I think if Alabama really wanted him, he'd go there. The one issue with the hurdle there is his contract extension that makes him the head coach till 2031 there at Clemson. But as we know with the Jimbo Fisher ordeal, you could get out of any contract. I mean, you could get bought out. Yeah, it's all about the Benjamins, okay? And that could happen if Alabama wants him to be their guy. But who does Alabama really want? Well, the head coach of this school, and that's Dan Lanning. And I think that speaks volumes, honestly. He's not even a former assistant of Nick Saban. He's a former assistant of a former assistant, and that's from Kirby Smart. Dan Lanning is 37 years young. He is the up and coming new head coach in all of college football. He is my head coach over at Oregon, and he has been doing a phenomenal job there. And there is a lot of upside for Oregon while he's there. And he has stated many times Oregon is where I'm going to be, but we've heard this before. Willie Taggart. Gosh, Willie Taggart, Oregon
Yeah.
head coach. Oregon's where I want to be. Oh, Florida State, what's up? Oh, I'm gonna suck. Now he's with the Baltimore Ravens, but
Yeah.
it,
Hey,
let
just to correct you, Matthew, I'm pretty certain that Lanning was a graduate assistant at Alabama under Saban
okay.
for like a year.
Okay.
Um, yeah, very obviously, like very forgettable, and certainly not the kind of assistant that Smart or Kiffin or
Yeah,
Sark were. But
absolutely. And he became his success came with Georgia and Kirby Smart. But
yeah,
thank you for pointing that
I
out.
get what you mean, but just wanted to throw it in there.
No, I appreciate you saying that. So, but it's his name is everywhere, and rightfully so. But like I said, that speaks volumes. I mean, uh, he hasn't really made himself as one of the best head coaches yet in college, but could be the best head coach in college. And Alabama wants him. And I could understand why with what he's doing in Oregon and just what his future holds and how young he is too. Alabama wants a guy that's going to be there for a while. I don't think they want a guy that's just going to be there for a year or two. And Alabama, for many years, has been the staple of college football. That's where everyone wants to be. But we now know that there's not much loyalty anymore in college football. Shoot, even the NFL. If this could be, brought up. Sometimes that gets people's attention. Dan Lanning does. I look at him as kind of a different guy than that, but who knows? I mean, Alabama is that standard, and it's already being talked about. But it was talked about with the whole Texas A&M thing, and he made that clear. But Alabama's different than A&M. They are by
Mhm.
far different than them. So I'm, of course, as an Oregon fan, I'm gonna be on this every day because it is big. It's Alabama. But does he want to stay loyal? Does he want to stay faithful to Oregon and Eugene? I sure hope so. I sure hope so.
Mhm.
But do I think he is the right guy for the Alabama job? Absolutely, I do. I'm not going to be in denial there. I think Dan Lanning would be the guy for Alabama. I just hope
Yeah,
that he chooses not to be.
yeah. Let me just throw my 2 cents in real quick about Dabo Sweeney, and then I'll hand it over to Ed. I'm telling you, there's no way in hell that Alabama is going to take Sweeney. Maybe like back in 2018 or whatever, yes, but Dabo Sweeney is way past his prime, and he is vehemently anti NIL. That's not going to fly at Alabama. So no, zero shot of Dabo going to Alabama. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, I have an I have a name that it's not the permanent hire, it's the guy to get to the next guy because nobody wants to be the guy to replace the man. So somebody that could be that transition person and get your laugh tracks ready, Bill O'Brien.
Oh man, Alabama fans are not going to want to hear
They
that.
would lose their mind. But here's why I say that. He took over a Penn State organization that was in shambles after the whole Sandusky thing. Then he went to and had great success there, by their standards, at that point. Then he went to the NFL, had success there. It was short lived, but had success. Then he went back to the Nick Saban school of coaching and, got acclimated with that entire organization, which Alabama's football program as an organization. Let's make no bones about it. But I think Bill O'Brien would be a good transition guy while they continue to look for the guy long term. So
Mhm.
that's just a name to throw out there. My 2 cents.
That's fair, but also let's not forget. Remember when Bobby Bowden stepped down, and then Jimbo replaced the guy, and he led FSU to a title. Granted, I think FSU probably won in spite of him and not because of him, but still,
I mean, that could still happen
yeah,
because when you look at Alabama's future, it isn't a matter of rebuilding ever at Alabama. It's
yeah,
just a matter of reloading. You
oh
know,
for sure,
when you take a look at what Alabama has coming down the pipeline already, it's the number 2 recruiting class coming up for this recruiting cycle and already the number 3 recruiting class for the cycle behind it. They're bringing in 2 5 stars already in this cycle. They've already got 4 stars lined up out of 2025. So it's not a matter of, you know, they're going to have to scrap everything and rebuild it. No, you just keep plug and play. That's the beauty of this whole Alabama thing is it is such a machine in and of itself that the parts just change. They don't necessarily make something completely different to put in its place. That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. So you're just plugging in 4 and 5 star recruits and you're plugging the transfer portal for those holes that you plug in. That is Alabama's structure. That is what they do. I don't care who the head coach is. That is how they're going to do it. And you can't expect me to think otherwise when that has been the blueprint that every other coach in the country has basically latched onto, knowing how recruiting cycles work. The one coach that is bucking that trend is Deion Sanders, and he's his own thing.
Yeah.
That is a completely separate deal. But with how the future holds for Alabama, I don't think it's going to change much. Maybe there's going to be more competition at the top of the SEC, but that's about it.
Yeah, notice there was 2 names didn't mention there, Ohio State names, and that's Mike Vrabel and that's Urban Meyer. It seems like, we watch a show and we have mad respect for them, and it's a show called Crane and Company. If you haven't checked them out, go check them out. They have an amazing show, and their host Jake Crane. Every time there's an opening, who does he say is going to get it? Urban Meyer, and it's always funny. It's always like that name is just thrown out.
yeah. Can we be real here?
If
Urban
you want to
Meyer.
win, you go get the biggest winner there is. And yeah,
Okay, but can we be real here? Like we all know that Urban Meyer is never going to coach again. Okay, like we can lie about it all we want, but deep down we know he's never going to coach again.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, then I will admit it. Okay, but I just don't see him going back to coaching.
Yeah, and we already know Mike Vrabel. I mean, if given the chance tomorrow, he'd be Ohio State's head coach if Ryan Day was
Mhm.
not there. But that kind of becomes a waiting game, and we're going to talk about Mike Vrabel at a different time. But of course, those are 2 names that you're probably going to see online be thrown out because Mike Vrabel just got fired. But Mike Vrabel is not going to go to Alabama. But I do like your prediction, Ed, with Bill O'Brien, and I think that would be a phenomenal move to make, and I think Bill O'Brien would be totally fine with that too. Just the kind of guy he is, that he would be fine with being kind of that stepping stone, that petri dish to whoever's going to be that next guy. But it's Alabama, guys. I mean, they
Yeah.
are the standard, and they will continue to have this recruiting class probably for years to come.
True, but um, let's also not forget that Alabama's record before Saban came along wasn't exactly the prettiest, and I'm sure Alabama fans did not see that coming. Like, I'm not saying that Alabama is gonna, go through a Tennessee phase or a Florida phase, but the path is a lot more open now that Saban is stepping down. So Alabama's AD is right now he has the most important job right now, and that is finding Saban's replacement. I know you can't ever replace Saban, but you know what I mean.
Well, and that's what, if I'm the AD, that's what I'm telling myself is Saban is an all-time great, if not the greatest. Remember, you're not going to find another Saban, but you need to find someone that is going to continue success at
Mhm.
Alabama, just not that success that Saban had and immediately, I should say, but just someone that could calm the waters. And you just need to remind yourself that.
Yeah.
But, you know, speaking of calm the waters, I don't know if this move necessarily did calm the waters,
Mhm.
because there is going to be some talks about it, and that's exactly what we're going to do right now. But other breaking news that happened today, and it's not as big as the Saban breaking news, but that is Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks as a head coach parting ways. Coming to an agreement. There, he is still going to remain in the organization, and it sounds like as an advisor. But this came kind of shocking to most of us. I did not really see this coming, but Seattle. They have their sights on something else or someone else, and they wanted to see things differently. But David, what do you see with this, with what Seattle is doing and with Pete Carroll?
Well, I think what we're all saying is that Pete Carroll stepped down, quote unquote. Really, I think we all know it was basically either step down or we're going to fire you. And this came as a shock to me as well. Now, at first, if there's one reason why it wouldn't be surprising, it's because Pete Carroll is up there in age. He's like 72 years old, I think. So yeah, he's up there in age, and he's won a lot of games with Seattle. He won them a Super Bowl, so he has nothing left to prove. I'm sure he would like to win at least one more Super Bowl, but he has nothing left to prove. And guys, what an incredible career that Pete Carroll has had, not just with the Seahawks, but with USC as well. He is the only coach in the BCS/ college football playoff era to win a college football national championship and a Super Bowl trophy, right? And when he came to Seattle, he really just completely shifted the culture of that program because, the reason why Coach Carroll was so successful at Seattle is because he is a player's coach. It doesn't mean he lets players run the show, but he's not a dictator. He's not a totalitarian. He's not going to, my way or highway his way through things. And it's because of that trust and that camaraderie that he was able to build with both his players and his coaches, that Seattle was able to develop a winning culture there. Now it is interesting that the Seahawks are now the only team above 500 to have you know to be without its now former head coach. Um, it'll be interesting to see where Seattle goes. Like, are there any potential candidates that you see, Ed?
Well, Dan Quinn can't go everywhere, but hey, uh, he's got to be at the top of almost everybody's list at this point because of turning around what was an atrocious defense at Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
They always had a great offense and an atrocious defense. Well, he kind of flipped the script on that, and that team has looked a whole lot better with Dan Quinn being the defensive coordinator. So
True.
it's time for him to get another shot at the head coaching level. Is Seattle the spot? I don't know, but it wouldn't hurt to at least have a conversation.
Yeah, no, true. And I definitely do think that Dan Quinn deserves another shot as a head coach. But I also think that GMs are going to be a little cautious because they're going to see his head coaching tenure at Atlanta and that, like, yes, he did, quote unquote, lead the Falcons to the Super Bowl, but we all know that was Kyle Shanahan who did that because the Falcons had a horrible defense that year. They went to the Super Bowl in spite of their defense.
Yeah, and I want to just go back to Pete Carroll. We're talking about a 72-year-old man, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he is the second oldest head coach in the NFL behind Bill Belichick. And
He is. Yeah.
we are looking. If you tune in on Sundays, you will see this guy out there running routes with his team. You see him running up and down the sideline. He is the most active guy out there, probably more than some of the players. You see him take his shirt off with DK Metcalf. You are absolutely right. This is a player's coach. He has that relationship with his players, and he's as youthful as they come as a 72-year-old. So I do
Hey,
want to say that.
you know what he also does all the time?
But
Yes. Yes.
Captain Bubblegum.
yes, yeah, you think he was a baseball player there on the sideline, but uh,
Right.
he does leave an incredible legacy, and you touched on it, David, with the national championship in the Super Bowl, and Ed's going to talk about that a little bit more. But Ed, you also have some more kind of fun facts about his legacy and some of his coaching tree.
Well, not many people remember this, but Pete Carroll was actually the head coach of the New England Patriots before Bill Parcells made it there.
Oh, I
So,
remember that. And he
so
sucked in New England, didn't he?
not really. It wasn't that bad. Just Bill Parcells was a bigger name.
Mm-hmm.
It was more guaranteed success, having Bill Parcells on your sideline than it was for Pete Carroll. He was still the same coach there, and before he went to USC and then on to Seattle. So he actually worked under 10 head coaches before before becoming a head coach, and that did include some pretty distinct company, like you hosted at Arkansas, you know, as well as Bud Grant, Jerry Burns, Bruce Coslet, George Seifert. He had a lot of experience with players, coaches, and that really helped shape how he communicated with his teams. But with his teams that he had underneath him, he had some great names work for him. It was almost as if these coaches work for different mindsets so they can learn to be better coaches themselves. Because I'm going to go through a couple names we've already talked about: Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian, Dan Quinn, Jed Fish, Robert Sala, Greg Robinson, Ed Ogeron, go Tigers, and Bo Pelini. These are just some of the names of the 15 assistants that have become head coaches for after working for uh, after working for Pete Carroll. So, and not only that, he's actually helped mold some executives into GM roles. I mean,
Yeah,
that is somebody that has his hand at every level of the organization.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Pete Carroll also the GM? Like he was one of the only guys to be both GM and head coach of the team.
I don't think he was.
Okay.
I think he worked well with the GM and put together the team as he saw fit, but it wasn't totally his call. There was a lot of great back and forth, because you see some organizations where the head coach needs something and the GM thinks they need something else, and there's an argument, and then next thing you know, you're the Carolina Panthers, and it just
Yeah, right.
all falls apart from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the great legacies about Pete Carroll, is the fact that not only did he do great at coaching himself, but he actually helped lead others to being head coaches, gave them the keys, so to speak, which I can't say for Bill Belichick. You look at Belichick's tree and it's a hot flaming garbage, but this is a coaching tree that has prosperity in its future, and he's got to be commended for it.
And you know something else, guys? We cannot talk about Pete Carroll without mentioning the Legion of Boom defense. And Pete Carroll, being a defensive guy, obviously deserves a ton of credit for the way that those guys played. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest defenses of all time. And you could even make an argument that perhaps they were the greatest defense of all time because of the numbers they put up in a league that heavily skews towards offense. I mean, guys like Richard Sherman, um, Earl Thomas, Brandon Browner, and then other guys who weren't part of the LOB, like who's Bobby Wagner. Seattle had insanely good defenses under Pete Carroll. Like certainly some of the best that I've ever seen in my lifetime. So I just think, like I said, you cannot talk about Pete Carroll without mentioning those crazy Seattle defenses.
Yeah, we will. I'll never forget the chain snatcher, Richard Sherman. That's what happens when you play a sorry receiver like Crabtree up
Don't you
against.
ever talk about me.
I mean, Richard Sherman, man, him, Cam Chancellor, Earl Tom. I mean, they were that was a legion of boom. I mean, Cam Chancellor, a guy so big and how he moved was amazing to me. But yes, Pete Carroll, he coached an incredible defense there, an incredible team. I mean, let's not forget they were one play away from winning the Super Bowl. Two of them, and that
Mhm.
that kind of falls on him too. But let's not knock on that. But uh, you know, two Super Bowls almost.
For what it's worth, apparently that season, the 2014 season, apparently Marshall Lynch, as good as he was actually horrible in goal line situations. So that call wasn't as bad as people like made it seem, but obviously the
Yeah.
optics didn't look so good.
But if you've watched the interview of gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the defensive back, Malcolm Butler. He said, we practiced this play nonstop the entire week leading up to it. So even the Patriots knew that play was going to happen. And it's crazy because of that, because of Marshawn Lynch, and being on the goal line like that. They just knew that play was coming. And obviously, he ran the route for the receiver, and we know what happens after that. But the legacy that Pete Carroll leaves is a great one. It really is. And the game's not going to be the same without him. I know he'll still be within the organization, but seeing that guy in the sideline running up and down as if he was part of the chain gang, we'll miss seeing that. But that leads to this next question. Where do the Seahawks go from here? As Ed touched on, Dan Quinn, of course, is going to be a name that gets floated around. It already has been. But the Seahawks need to decide kind of more than just that. Is Geno Smith their guy? Geno Smith had an incredible year last year. This year, he still put up decent numbers, but it wasn't that comeback year that he had the year before. They did deal with some injuries, but is Geno Smith going to be their guy moving forward? You're gonna need to talk about that. You're gonna need to talk about this defense. In this next draft, are you going to buff up this defense? You have Bobby Wagner, who did come back, but he's going to retire. He's up there in age too. He's not going to be there much longer. So they have a lot to decide. And of course, that does come with a head coach. The head coach also needs to decide too what is the next step. So uh, they want to be methodical, because when you've had a coach like Pete Carroll who has been there for a long time, you need to see who's going to be the next guy. And Pete Carroll, I will probably be a part of that hiring process. I would not be surprised if he's not in the same room with these interviews that happen. So Bill O'Brien, I'm sorry, Dan Quinn is going to be a name to look for. So, but the Seahawks, they are going to need to decide several things here. But first, it's going to start with their next head coach, and they're probably already making phone calls as we speak. So, uh, pay attention to where the Seahawks are going to go from here and where Alabama is going to go from here, because these are two shoes that need to be filled, and you are not going to fill them with the same talent that were in before. So that's one thing to be of note. You're not going to have another Nick Saban replace Nick Saban, nor are you going to have another Pete Carroll that replaces Pete Carroll.
Do we think that Seattle is going to go after an offensive minded guy or a defensive minded guy or a special teams minded guy like John Harbaugh? I'm not saying they're going to go after John Harbaugh, but like get a special teams guy like John Harbaugh was.
I definitely think that no matter if they go with an offensive minded guy or a defensive minded guy, they need to trade up and get Michael Penix. Uh,
Yeah, I was thinking that.
uh,
I think I think
because
Seattle
Geno
needs to
Smith,
blow.
yeah, he was a great story. He's not a long term answer
Oh, for
at
sure.
quarterback.
I think the Seahawks need to like this might sound extreme, and maybe I'll take this back later. But I think the Seahawks need to blow it all up. I think they just need to do a complete do over.
Yeah, well, you look at just their wide receivers alone: DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Tyler Lockett. Those are some pretty darn good receivers right there. You just need to find a quarterback that's going to, treat them well. And yes, Michael Penix would be that guy. I mean, coming from Washington, that would be an amazing story too. So, uh, I I could see that happening. But yeah, I don't know if they're going to go with offensive minded guy. I mean, you are seeing teams like the Panthers, the Chargers, Washington as well. They are looking kind of for offensive minded guys, and I get why they would. You want Bryce Young to have that offensive minded coach that's going to help mold him. Same with the Chargers with Justin Herbert.
Mhm.
But are they going to follow that trend? Like, is Seattle going to follow that trend? Are they going to bring a defensive minded like a Dan Quinn into there, or who else am I seeing? Uh, Giants defensive coordinator that just got let go as well. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
Wink? Are
huh?
you talking about Wink?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah, the
isn't it?
Wink.
Yeah,
Like
Martindale.
what was that?
Wink Martindale.
Oh
yeah,
yeah. I gotta say, guys, like I think the whole idea of like, well, if you have a, future superstar quarterback, you have to hire an offensive head coach. I think that mindset is a little overrated. You don't necessarily have to hire an offensive minded head coach because you can certainly have a defensive minded coach hire an incredible offensive mind.
Well, and there's also other layers to this as well. When you look at the salary cap options that the Seahawks have going into next year, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf account for $51 million on the salary cap. Do you know how many offensive linemen that would give whatever quarterback they take in this draft? Because I'm just going to assume they're taking a quarterback uh,
Hmm.
after Pete Carroll being gone. There's and you want to blow the whole thing up. Well, if you're going to do it, blow it up. Move on from all those guys. Geno's got 31 against him, 27 against Tyler, 24-5 against DK Metcalf. That's going to free up so much space for you to rebuild with a rookie quarterback. That window is going to be wide open for you for the first 5 years of Penix's. I say Michael Penix. Uh, of his NFL career.
yeah.
So I just saw this by the way. Like this literally came to mind, and I'm really curious to know what you guys think. So we all know that Russell Wilson was practically forced out of Seattle. Pete Carroll was more than likely forced out of coaching. Like, is there um is there a problem that we see with Seattle's management? Like, is Seattle's management just becoming increasingly difficult to work for? What do you think, Ed?
I just think they realize it's time to move on and stop hanging on to the glory days of 10 plus years ago.
Okay, that's
And,
fair.
you can't, it was lightning in a bottle, and you can't catch lightning that many times in a row with the salary cap era. You just can't.
Yeah, they made educated moves. They saw a Russell Wilson who didn't have that it factor as much anymore, slowing down. So they got rid of him, but there was some more there, and I think that we know that. But that happened, and then Pete Carroll. It's just at that time too. It was just an educated move on their part. They are now trying to move forward instead of holding it too long.
I got you guys.
Yes, but that's about all we have today, though, folks. This was the breaking news that happened today. And of course, we had to cover this because it is a big deal. It is a big deal at the college level and it is a big deal at the NFL level. So it was only right that we did our show based on this today. And we want to hear how you guys feel about this and your predictions. Who is going to be the next Crimson Tide head coach, and who is going to be the next Seattle Seahawks head coach, and how are they going to move forward from here, because there's a lot that needs to be done in that Seattle organization, whereas Alabama, you're never going to fill those shoes completely with Nick Saban, but you are going to continue to have talent pour in from the recruiting standpoint. So let us know how you guys feel about that and your predictions, but also hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, let people know. And guys, if you don't know already, I'm going to put this out there. We like to talk sports and sports only on here. We are a sports show. We are not the news. We are not political analysts or anything like that. But with that being said, we do have election. It's coming up, and I want to give a shout out to the guys who make this possible for us, and that is American Daily Press. If you want to get up to date news on what's going on, maybe with the Iowa caucus coming up, or anything else that doesn't necessarily is political, but you want to look up, go ahead and check out AmericanDailyPress.com. Unbiased news, where they're going to give you all the live news as possible as they can and just keep you up to date. So give them a check out, and you will also see our videos on there too. So if you want to support us, also support us on there. So we appreciate you guys, and we're going to continue to give you all the best that we can. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third, and we are headed for home.